Well met, lords and ladies, Jacob Butter speaking, and a warm welcome to this week's Walking Wednesday, featuring my allergies probably, because, yeah, I started sneezing right as I came out here. That normally doesn't actually, happen so quickly. So yeah, who knows. Just like to start right off the bat by saying thank you to everyone for the supportive messages, or just for, being around me for the past week, because I know that I came right out of the gate with like a very heavy hitting video, with no warning to any of you as to what's happening. In fact, that was the warning, basically. So yeah, I appreciate that, and people who've just taken time to hang around with me and such, because I mean, you've seen me for the past week. I do seem to be, pretty cheerful when I'm around other people, because that's what makes me happy. You guys make me happy. So yeah, getting back into the swing of things, at least on the YouTube sphere, has been something on my eye. Has been very helpful, so thank you all. And yeah, speaking of getting back into the swing of YouTube things, this might be the first time I'm actually giving an update about the actual week, rather than one event or a movie that I have watched. So yeah, I think just to really say something from 2 weeks ago, the appeal from demonetization hasn't actually, I think I mentioned this briefly, but it didn't go through. Well, I mean, actually it did, but the person who's actually came back and reviewed it personally said that no, it's the same thing as before. Once again, nothing specific. Although, who actually knows? I should talk to KW about something, because from KW's live stream takedowns or something, it does seem to be that if you don't know what happened on KW's side of things, YouTube came after her and said, oh, in the live streams, because she looks like a minor, that well, a young minor rather, that basically she wasn't allowed to do live streams, and that happened a few times. She clarifies it every time and does get through, as proof of age. However, yeah, who knows? Now that I think about it, as far as child safety goes, if that's their live stream policy, and YouTube, the community guideline strike that I have currently was on a live stream video. I should go back and check on that video to see who actually featured. Maybe there's just a bunch of those, because Lord knows I've had tons of live streams. And I think if I say minor, they mean essentially 13 and under can't appear on live streams. And pretty sure that most of the time the people who have been in those streams have been over 13, or 13 themselves. Trying to think though. I know there are a couple of examples. I mean, the Jax Penmill ones, certainly. Although, quite frankly, I can just cut him out of those segments and probably not lose much of anything. So, there you go. There might be some other people, but basically the only reason I bring up Jax particularly is because his age has been stated by his own mother on one of the videos. So I'm not, overstepping any boundaries there, because that was already known, basically. So yeah, I'm thinking about that, but my other thing is that, depending on if that happens again, considering how the main channel is so live stream reliant, essentially, it does seem prudent to actually make just several different backups, or engage in the ones that I've already actually got going on, like the Gacha Review channel exclusively, that I said I was going to update a certain point after achieving the watch hours, and then vacation happened and everything else. So I guess now would be the time to do that. Well, sort of. I haven't fully got back into everything, because I've been all over the place on an emotional level. I walked past this road before and nothing was going on, but now there's construction. Great. But the one thing I have been able to do in the meantime, behind the scenes, was the Mutant Girl. As it turns out, I might have been very quick to jump the gun as far as Aiden being a distraction when actually making the videos, so that they're doing the editing calls. Now that I think about it, probably the distracting part is when it's late at night and I've been just typing to him and I have to take the time out again to actually go and respond, on top of the fact that he's the only voice that I hear, at the same time as going over the sound, which he can't hear on his end because of how share system audio works on Discord. So he has no idea when he's interrupting something that either features him or a sound effect that I'm trying to sync up to a degree where it doesn't hurt the person's ears. And it seems that having stuff at default volume never seems to work out, so I just end up audio reducing pretty much everything, which is a godsend on Restream, because that Restream amplifies everything for some reason. So yeah, maybe if it's actually on a proper call, I might consider in future more videos edited with Aiden on call or something. Or maybe even make those into the editor streams that Johnny used to do. You know, because, don't know if you all remember that, but back in the day, Johnny, aka Wipeout Media Fan 14, actually decided to, impromptu live streams where he was making the videos in question, and people would be able to contribute their own ideas and their own dialogue in the moment. And that actually also, now I think about it, considering the amount of people that are featured characters who are actually like inserts from friendship groups, in fact myself included, I was a judge on Ballroom Pops. It tracks that they want to actually voice their own characters. Of course, that then removes another thing of, like, you know, when you have the agency as the director and head writer to actually make it all one coherent vision per se. It is a challenge, and in fact it's one that seems to have popped up quite frequently as far as the gacha reviews that have been done this week, with the exception of the Music Freaks. Because given all of the other ones, so Theatre Throwdown, Ponies, and actually wait, that is the other two. I only did 3 reviews this week. So yeah, Theatre Throwdown and Ponies. They were they had a number of things in common, weirdly enough. So if you don't know, once again, go to KW. The Ponies movie came out 2 days ago now, and I reviewed it 1 day ago, or I guess technically speaking, like less than 12 hours ago. So yeah, the actual I forgot what I was going to say now. Deciding which path to go. I'm very indecisive today. Yeah, but but beforehand, Theatre Throwdown was a different gacha thing, which I have which I also came across because I'm trying to get back to the swing of voice acting, because there seems to be a lot of voice acting projects that are coming out or starting to gain traction and production around this time, which, now that I think about it, probably means that it is a case of, you know, people are on summer holiday, so now they have the time to begin these things. And who knows if this new wave of people realize the effort and required and involved. Although who knows, because I mean, KW and Molly the Bunny have both actually been doing their side of things, and that has had, and progress has been made for both of them. Especially KW, who, you know, is complete, movie's out. But yeah, one of those things that was being promoted was Theatre Throwdown, which unlike the other ones, happen to already have an episode 1. So I think that was mainly used as a demonstration of what the show involved and how, and about the characters, which actually, by the way, is actually kind of a genius move, because most of the time you get these descriptions, and that's kind of it. Admittedly, a lot of the show premises nowadays actually seem like very original and very well thought out. If the wording might be a little bit weird on some of them, as I have pointed out to the Butter Bunch in one of the examples recently, but for the most part, including Theatre Throwdown, there was potential there, because essentially, you know, it's like drama emerging within the drama club, which I guess technically speaking is kind of similar to what's the thing we're doing on Minecraft. Yeah, who knows. But then when we watched it, I see people compared it a lot to the Music Freaks. So I was like, okay, let's see what this is like. Let's do an actual review at the same time. Then I'll check this out. And I still haven't auditioned for it yet, but they're looking for other characters, and I now have an idea of what the show is about. And I certainly have an idea, because I see why they say it's like the Music Freaks, because it's a school club where we've got all these different members, you know, and a lot of them are larger than life characters. Yeah. So, yeah, I can understand that. And admittedly, doing a show about a drama club is something that I actually considered long before Aidan had the idea and jumped forward. In fact, I think I might have actually suggested the drama club premise itself. I don't remember how that went. I know that Aidan wanted to do another show. Maybe I can't remember. But point is, one of us came up with that. Then, but it has one difference as far as the Music Freaks goes, and it all comes down to execution. If you haven't seen that video, let's just say Ghosty was in that, as a guest in that, and she said that during work, one of the things that she does is sometimes puts on the Adam Code Purple review, or one of the Adam Code Purple reviews, because there's several, and just like listens to that, and that seems to be the big like the one that she comes back to. Theatre Throwdown, in that video, she laughed harder than I ever thought I ever heard her laugh before, which probably, you know, speaks volumes to just the sheer amazingness that is that video. As like the original, not the review. I can't really I'm not going to toot my own horn that much, and I'm not good on that part. That's too much. I'm not going to toot my own horn about that. I mean, like the original video that we were reacting to, there were so many things, mainly on an editing level, where we just thought, like, what is the point of this? Like, some of the details of like trying to have like minor like animations and such just ended up backfiring spectacularly. Which I guess is that there is an element of tragedy to that comedy, apt for theatre, because in a way that you see that happen a lot of the time, where someone attempts a new thing, and then it ends up being like a very unnecessary detail. I guess you could kind of argue that back in the day people told me that was a thing. Because when I first showed The Mutant Girl, and people said the voice acting was unnecessary or stuff like that. So I guess, in a way, you've got to actually push forward with that and actually, test your own limits and try something new. Otherwise you won't know if it works or doesn't. It's just a shame that everything in that just didn't all at once. So, yeah, that was rather unfortunate. But it also made for a hilarious video. Of that there is no denying. And then after that, we went straight on to the next day reviewing the Music Freaks with the Butter Bunch, minus one person who couldn't make it in the end. But yeah, Aiden and BB were there, and if you haven't seen the Butter Bunch reviews like on the actual Butter Bunch channel of episodes 1 and 2, you might be surprised about why I went straight to 3, considering that Music Freaks actually did come to a season finale only just recently, like 3 days ago, I think. Or well, season finale part 2, the actual ending, let's say. And I haven't been caught up on that because I've been meaning to go back and continue reviewing the Music Freaks the whole way through. Because of course I gotta see it. I gotta see it blind. I can't be like, oh, well, this is something I saw before. I mean, I technically could, but it wouldn't be the same. And the Music Freaks does indeed deserve the same reviewing like standards and practices as everything else that I do. And that is always interesting when that comes up, because I mean, to a lot of people, the Music Freaks is the exception to plenty of the rules, let's say, that they have thought of when it comes to gacha, and how that's perceived and experienced. Not saying that's true for anyone who was like there at the time, but actually maybe for some of them back in the day, yes. Because I remember in 2020 when we did the first Music Freaks review on the Butter Bunch, both Aiden and Shorty had already seen the first, had already seen the episodes up until that point, which I think was maybe like episode 4 had come out. And then after episode 5, Aiden kind of like went off it a little bit. The point is, but up until like episode 4, ironically enough, the ones that now have been deemed as obsolete and outdated because of the fact they use Gacha Life and didn't jump all the way into animation, they perceive the Music Freaks the same way a lot of other people do, as complete perfection. And so it is always interesting going back and actually seeing that because of how big the standard is and how the perception goes with that series. Because normally, whenever I review stuff, I don't tend to get too much pushback from people. And in this case, it's really like sometimes like what Aiden said something during the live stream, which he brings up a lot of the time when I talk about the Music Freaks in general, on and off camera, where he says that he thinks I'm being too harsh on the Music Freaks specifically, or that it comes across like I'm actively looking for things to critique, and like I'm actively trying to seek out the bad things. And the reason it comes across as that is, again, because of the perception of the Music Freaks. I don't think I did anything differently in that video that I don't normally do. Whenever I see something that I think particularly that the person can improve, or that someone else watching can improve upon in their own work, then I will of course point that out. And it goes both with positives and negatives. But because the Music Freaks has such high standards, and particularly, well, I mean, Aiden has critiqued the story himself, so he wasn't going to push me back that far. But as far as talking about like visuals and how some of that stuff comes together, I think it was when I suggested a different thing that was not like a bad idea for a visual. It was just it needed an improvement. Or well, I didn't think it could have an improvement. I thought that since the song was being directed towards Hayley, that when Millie sings to Hayley in flashback mode, having Hayley's face and actual reaction would have been more poignant and serve the purpose more, because she's supposed to be telling us that. In actual musicals, you have some people, like, when they come back to you and direct to you, and of course when you're on stage acting as reacting, you have to react to that. So that is how musicals tend to go. But then there started this whole thing about the Music Freaks being more artsy, and how I don't tend to go for that too much or him for that matter. He did point that out of himself. And how, again, I might be actively looking for stuff to critique. And admittedly, the culmination of musical number and just actual, like, narratively, purposely serving visuals and the integration of both of those things, all of that together, you know, the music, the story, the visuals, all of that is like at once everything that I love. And when I like something, I've said this before, I tend to be harsher on it. I mean, how many bad things have I said about My Street? Hundreds, maybe even thousands. It's still my favorite show of all time. You know, how many things have I critiqued for the Guardians do? Another artistically abstract show. Again, not maybe hundreds of thousands because it's only a few episodes, but you get the point. I don't think I'm actively going through and actually deciding to break those down any other way, but because of the fact that, again, this is the perfection that we mere mortals cannot hope to achieve. It seems that the person who's interpreted it like that would be Aiden himself. And then potentially other people, because I mean, again, like I said, back in 2020 when we started, Aiden and Shorty saw it as complete perfection. Everything that I said in that review suddenly got pushed back, and I was like, come on, it's a review. I have to be fair. I have to say what I actually think. If I think something could be better, I'm going to say that it could be better. Again, maybe I might deliver it in a different way because I'm on camera, but I mean, for crying out loud, if I actually, if all I did was actually like go through like in a serious breakdown without any sort of interesting reaction whatsoever, I'd just be doing what Monet does off camera, just end up like sapping the energy out of the actual video, which is the reason that Monet doesn't tend to do reviews on camera most of the time. So yeah, and actually, to be fair, there is indeed a difference. There's a reason that she enjoyed me actually going through and talking about the stuff that she did, and then. But yeah, that's what I mean. So combine the entertaining part and combine the actual review. I did think about whether or not I was actually being too harsh or something. There is a possibility that given the standard of Music Freaks that I could, in theory, come down much more harshly on it because of like how it is perceived, and being like, okay, you think this is perfect? Well, here is this. But the thing is, I don't think I really have to. Because on one hand, I really do enjoy the Music Freaks. I love the show. Up until this point, I mean, again, some of the story elements don't quite come together, but the character dynamics are actually like spot on a pinpoint, and then also the very slow evolutions. I don't like how the romantic tension seems to be evolving between Jake and Haley, but then again, lots of people do, and it seems that was actively encouraged in the fandom. So, again, not perfect, but still great, still amazing. And that's really what I wanted to say in those reviews. They're still amazing, but not perfect. So again, good and the bad. I guess maybe considering that it has been such a long time, Aiden fell into the exact same trap a second time by pure accident. But, oh well, you never know. And then after that, we went on to something else, which is the complete opposite, where it is instead of being not perfect but still great, it ends up being absolutely terrible, but also still great. But it's not the complete opposite. And that was the Ponies movie, which again shares a lot of makeup with Theatre Throwdown. And theater, because again with Theater Throwdown, a lot of that was like the story in there, kind of like Music Freaks again, but even more basic and not quite as established. Because I mean, in the Music Freaks, the main character actually has to go on a journey to accept his own passion. This one just kind of like goes straight in and doesn't really do much. But with Ponies, already we've had the show where I guess the same thing happened. The main character ended up being hijacked by a different person in the cast. And how was that actually fixed? Well, by actually trimming down that hijacking character's contribution to very, very bare minimum. So I guess spoilers for the Ponies movie incoming. So go ahead and actually watch that first. Oh great, I just realized it's got another movie review. Can't get rid of those. But yeah, so yeah, with this actually, there was an improvement as far as like the editing composition goes, because there was far less hesitation in the moment of like, because KW wasn't doing the lines live, she recorded herself along with the other voice actors and synced up everything, which did unfortunately mean that everything was out of sync. But yeah, that was. But it was still an improvement. Actually, it made things seem like they were all the lines were coming from one particular place. And I guess also the fact that everything was scripted. I wonder if she actually had to learn the entire script just to put those together, or if actually she had that next to her the whole time. I don't actually know. There was one point where she was like, "Oh no, I forgot to edit myself out." Meanwhile, cut to the actual show and her entire torso is on display at one point. It's one of those things. Yeah, but yeah, in the actual when it comes to the actual story, that's where it gets really fun, because yeah, as Maya 2.0 pointed out, the story was very creative, but again, like I said it before, it all comes down to execution. And again, the execution was still better, but still not, let's say, immaculate. Because there were still a few times where, sometimes characters would be just lying down, so you wouldn't have to move them, or some of the delivery, particularly, did what could have been improved a lot. Even from me, I will say that much. Even from me, because I actually at one point Junior's microphone broke. If you know who Junior is the regular guest star on the Fallen Angels reactions that KW does. Which, by the way, check those out if you haven't seen them already. They are very entertaining. Yeah, so Junior's phone broke, and so I was called in to do those last few lines, not realizing that Junior had already started, so I couldn't do. So apparently, it ended up being more accurate to the actual characters from the source material, but not really accurate to Junior. So it was an obvious transition. I also didn't have the context of anything, which I've talked about before. To both KW and Bon, who I guess it makes sense they'd have the same process. They work together most of the time. So, yeah, they're just sending like the lines to people without much context, and then didn't really ask for any retakes. And the problem with that is that if you do that, you risk ending up with people not knowing what the actual context is, and therefore how to actually emote the lines appropriately and match the tone from other people. So, like at one point, Raph actually comes across as being like really annoyed, and then people were like, what's that attitude? Get him out of here. And I was like, I had no choice. I didn't know it was a calm scene. I also didn't know that one of the characters was going to be like, lying dead on the doorstep. So I was like, hey, you okay? You feeling alright? You got mild fever? As it turns out, my one Funtime Freddy line ended up going well. Which, by the way, considering that I thought the character only had one line in the actual movie, I'm glad that it was the case of just I ended up replacing some people because. And in case you're wondering why I keep mentioning Raph and Freddy and other people, yeah, the Ponies movie is we're into the Ponyverse now. Well, we're not really the Ponyverse, just the verse, because like the other creatures are the other people across the cosmos, aka the other ones, are all from different universes and different franchises. And I will say no more about that because I accidentally predicted their backstory and reason to be, which wasn't a thing in the actual movie, but yeah, the movie didn't really conclude everything it could. There were still plenty of unanswered questions and some loose ends in the plot that didn't go too far, which actually apparently was due to there being several script writers in charge of different scenes and not being able to finalize that. Now, I will say, having multiple writers can be a blessing. That's why Aiden and I write together so frequently. However, compare how Ponies went to Secrets of the Plex, where Secrets of the Plex had different people's insert characters or OCs, and much like Johnny's work. However, unlike Johnny's work, then when it came down to actually making the script for it, Bond took over and then collected everything together to make it work in the one narrative, based on the other people's ideas, and cutting out what didn't need to be there and keeping what did. So that's how that goes, and that's the best method you can do in there. In fact, I think KW at one point said, "Oh, don't tell me what's going to happen to Mira. I want to be surprised." That's an extra bonus if you have that level of detachment. It really helps. But some people, when they do that, they get really, really attached to the ideas of their characters, and they don't really realize that when doing a collaborative effort, you have to compromise. And this happens with disco pops, with jazz pops, with any of the pops that have different people and sometimes end up having guest writers. It seems that Johnny and Eli, and then now I guess also KW, have that problem where people push back so much at anything that is remotely different to what they envisioned for the sake of the story, which results in the story not being as strong. And in KW's case, a lot of stuff going unfinished because that writer was left in charge of a certain point, and KW didn't want to finish it herself before the movie. The movie was admittedly quite rushed, admitted by the actual director of it, of course. That's not just me saying that, although I guess I could have said that too. Because, yeah, there wasn't really much time, like in a movie, there wasn't much time for any scenes of the characters being themselves without having it come back to the plot. There was a couple of times between Rainbow and Sweetie Belle that I did appreciate where they actually do acknowledge their grief together, because they've both just been through this shocking event and they've experienced a friendly betrayal, and they have to work through it. But then it goes immediately back to it goes back to which one of us might be the grandchild of the original pony, and then and we'll be able to use the crown to defeat Katrina in one swoop, just being like, "Be gone, Katrina!" Nope. That was it. That was the end of the battle. That was I don't know. Hold on. Ah, it's a roundabout. It's gonna come back this way. Great. Okay, I'll just leave before it joins back. Yeah, so that happened. And because of that, it seems like, yes, every scene counts when you do that. It's kind of like Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, but then when you don't really have enough time to say, oh, there's so many new characters, there's the other ones, why are they even here? Don't know, they won't say, stop asking questions. Like, what? So, I'm glad that the movie is going to get a continuation, because the way that it ended up, it seemed a lot like an intermission. An intermission between one season and the next. And it does actively set up there's going to be other plots. Although KW said she hadn't decided on doing another one yet. In which case, I would say, why the flying heck would you make a cliffhanger if you hadn't done that? Imagine if you decided not to continue it. Ever. Awesome. Ah! But yeah, it's continuing. And who knows, it might end up being a gacha. That was the next thing that was considered. And who knows? I mean, if Ponies does end up being a gacha series, I wonder if like it will have the same like element of fun that it did before. Because again, like part of the entertaining factor in Theatre Throwdown, and
hi guys.
Oh my goodness! Hello. I see. Wait, I don't know if you're in frame. There you are. Oh, okay. Hello. All right. God, where was I? lost my train of thought now. Gosh darn it. Okay, Ponies. Yes. So yeah, the element of fun from the movie as well came in from like just the little details of like how it was actually made. Because like the first series particularly was so rough that it was hilarious to behold. At the same time as like some of the story was still being as creative as ever, but actually didn't seem to like fully embrace its own potential, and then afterwards kind of shot itself in the foot by being like, oh well, there's so much tension between all the ponies now. Guess what? Not resolved because they all die. So, I guess in a way, I did say to Aiden that Ponies shares that in common with Game of Thrones, where there's all of these families and factions and whatever, all competing for the Iron Throne. Who usurped who marries who, and therefore gets a claim to the place or whatever. You know, what house is truly the noblest, and blah blah blah. Meanwhile, there are these demonic creatures that are waiting in the wings just to come in and just swoop down and destroy them all. And no one pays attention to that. Whereas in Ponies, they actually do, because that's the backstory. There was tension between the different species of ponies, and then a common evil comes around and they defeat it together. And then 100 or more years later, the same tension starts to appear again, a common enemy appears, and the universe gets erased. Like, what? So, again, very happy it didn't just end there. Because clearly every time that KW decides, oh, this is the end of whatever it might be, there seems to be a cliffhanger. I don't know if that's a subconscious thing, because Ponies could have just ended without the movie itself. There was consideration of a second season, but nothing definitive, because most of Ponies was filmed during lockdown and ended up being released like a long time later. So it's not like an urgent thing, which I guess also is where the movie kind of like falls, because it was made with a sense of like rapid urgency. If it had just been, oh, collect all the voice lines while everyone is around and available, and then take the time with the editing, then I can see it being like, well, here you go. Here's it would end up being like far better, and actually for more time of other stuff. I mean, again, like most of the time in The Mutant Girl is waiting around for voice actors, admittedly. But once you've got that, I mean, assuming life doesn't catch up to you like it did with me, then you should be all right to go, and then take your time with it. Just don't give yourself a super tedious scene, like a swimming pool, and then and decide to make a bunch of different layers of characters, assuming it will save time, but in reality it actually just extends it ad nauseum. It does depend. I miss doing simple scenes in Musing Girl. Like in the last scene of the episode was done by me, and that was a relatively simple ordeal, including little bits of masking, which I also learnt. I learned things like the muffler in terms of sound as well. That was and I used it in a Music Freaks inspired moment as well. So again, taking inspiration. But who knows? Ultimately, Ponies and Theatre Throwdown was still incredibly fun despite everything that I just said. So I still would recommend checking them out, and also check out the original Pony series. And also the Music Freaks, but you know, for different reasons, check out the Music Freaks. And that's my and that's when apparently, you know, I've done the MatPat rule of how people do so many things they like us to listen, but I have my outro, so I'll do my outro, which is please leave a like or dislike because your opinion matters. As Grant done so already, and on that note, until next time, farewell. Oh, no, hold on, one more thing. Next week is my 10th anniversary on YouTube, which means that I might be doing like several different specials. I can't decide on which one. But if you have an idea for us for a 10-year special, please put it in the comments. And I should have put that at the beginning. If you don't listen to anything else I said, do that. Okay, now, until next time.